for me, like I try to imitate what I see on ArtStation's front page or what all the other stuff I see, and I distance myself from doing what gets me excited.
Adam, you don't know how it breaks my heart to hear that.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mark-Pierre Sondergaard. I'm a texture artist in visual effects. Welcome to my podcast. Let's be honest, a life and a career as a working artist can be very fulfilling, but it's not for the faint of heart. It's filled with challenges and obstacles, and the path forward is not always clear or simple. On this podcast, we discuss all of this openly and honestly with experienced artists who have already walked that road. That's why I call it the naked texture artist. There are many podcasts that focus on and celebrate all the big achievements in visual effects and animation. But my career as a texture artist has not been one unending victory lap. So personally, I'm more interested in learning how my fellow artists handle the hard things, when things don't work, when things break, or when we're expected to produce the impossible. All of that stuff that takes place behind the curtain. So I invite you to join me on this journey. Hopefully together we can learn from the artists who went before us, save ourselves some scars and some tears, and increase our joy as working artists. Welcome to the Naked Texture Artist.
Welcome back to the second slice from my conversation with the world's most famous texture artist, Adam Capone. Now we're getting to the good stuff. This part of the conversation is what I really wanted to both explore personally and certainly also share with you all. By now, I think you should have a good impression of Adam. You can probably tell that he's a very humble and hardworking artist. He's painfully shy and very hard on himself. I think many of us fit that description and can relate, definitely. And maybe you can also glean that he's not normal. I say this with the greatest respect and fondness. We have plenty of normality in this world. I doubt we need more of it, particularly in the creative industries. Anyway, but Adam just thinks differently. If my brain is straight, then his is curly. And therein lies his genius. His approach to the world and how he sees things is just different. Different like Fumito Ueda is different. Different like Keita Takahashi is different. Different like Tim Burton or Guillermo del Toro are different. Different good. Which helps flavor his creativity in a fantastically original way. It's when he taps into that he becomes this incredibly creative artist. So Adam was a daily part of my life while we were studying at University of Teesside. I was in love with Adam's creativity. You know, the urge to conform to what is popular around us is very strong in all of us. We human beings are not lone wolves. But then again, neither are wolves. Lone wolves are the losers of the wolf world. But that's an aside. No, we human beings are meant to live in societies, so we need that approval. It wasn't that Adam couldn't see what other people thought was cool, but somehow he was immune to it and just kept navigating by his own personal sense of what was cool, undisturbed or swayed by the noise of people's opinions around him. He simply walked to the beat of his own drum. When you come across someone like Adam, at first your reaction may be jealousy. You too want to possess what he can do. But quickly you realize it's just not possible. And so you hopefully, instead of turning to hate and jealousy, which some did, you submit to love. You submit to simply being a fan. And back then, without the shackles of commercial art, he was wildly original and dazzled lecturers and students alike. I was a fan. as much as I was a friend. As I've been watching Adam over the course of his career, he has always had an incredible production of personal projects outside of work. But his side projects have changed quite a lot over time. They've gone from these wildly creative animated shorts to much more conservative material tests. Sure, Adam's inimitable style still shines through in what he does, even in a simple substance designer material. But I've been wondering for a long time, what happened? Why the change? Has his ambition or his sense of play been beaten out of him? Or maybe it was just a result of growing older and changing as a person. Or maybe this reflects the conditions of his work life, that he urgently needs to practice software features for day-to-day work rather than putting together things just for the fun of it, and there simply is no energy left for anything else? Or could it be that over time that side of him has been put down to the point that he no longer believes that his personal creative output has any worth? Or maybe he just gets that itch satisfied through his commercial work now. I don't know. But I have been saddened by this development because without that product of Adam's raw and pure creativity out there in the world, well, we're all poorer off. Maybe there are no good answers to this, but I think this is an internal struggle a lot of artists can relate to. How to keep singing that silent song in your heart, particularly if nobody appears to appreciate it or even listen. Or where to go, what to do if you do give up on that dream.
So you've been a working artist for, well, soon 20 years, right? Or
Yeah, coming up to 20 years,
yeah.
I'd say.
What have you learned about your strengths and weaknesses as an artist? Is that something you stop and you've taken stock of over time?
Yeah, I'd say my strength is the just having a good sense of color and composition. Maybe I got those from my graphic design days. My weakness is struggling to process and store information that I gather. Like, I rely heavily on my own documentation when I'm learning software. If I learn something, I have to write it down for myself.
So you're a big note taker?
But not on physical paper. I have to write it in a ordered, managed document
Really?
that I can easily access. And
I mean,
yeah.
that sounds pretty cool. I'm thinking your documents are probably I'm thinking these should be sold on Gumroad for $5 or something. You know, like Adam's cheat sheet to Dynamesh or whatever it may be.
Oh, I wouldn't be able to sell my ones from Ubisoft, unfortunately. But yeah, maybe I could do my own. But I've also been doing tutorials of my own a few years ago. And that's something I'm kind of
I remember
interested in.
a good few years ago, you used to blog on a fairly regular basis just about your experiences as a text artist. They were very instructive, those blogs, you know? And I mean, if you go
Yeah.
back and look at them now, you probably think, oh my goodness, things have moved forward so much since then. Yes, but in the moment, they were good. They were very instructive. So I can see that being both a weakness, but something that you have kind of have developed into a strength of sorts.
I'd say that even though I'm able to present some of these ideas, I still have almost like a, what is it, imposter syndrome about them. When I did some Gumroad tutorials, and I still sell them, like, to this day, like, that I made years ago, and each time it comes up in my email that says that I've sold a tutorial, my heart sinks and I just think, oh no, that someone's just spent money on this. And that's why I've kind of like made them cheap as well. Just so that it lowers the blow.
You're kidding me. Adam, I have to say, I don't understand you. I really don't understand you, because now that I'm doing this podcast, there is also a tiny, tiny option for people to contribute money towards this. Believe me, you're not becoming a millionaire from this. And when that happens, on this rare, rare occasion that somebody thinks that whatever nonsense I'm doing here is good enough to send me $1, my heart just soars. I'm just like, oh, thank you so much. You think but you have the complete opposite.
Yeah, I'm the opposite.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. You really are hard on yourself.
Yeah, and that's another weakness
You
I
must
would
have
say.
an absolutely crushing imposter syndrome. How do you stand upright? How do you manage that?
I think mentoring has really helped with that, because it wasn't until I started mentoring that I kind of realized, oh, actually, I know quite a lot. So that kind of shed away those kind of fears of being an imposter in the industry. But
By now, you must have heard me say the same thing about imposter syndrome a million times. I focus on it so much because I believe it is the single largest limiting factor for artists of all stripes across all time periods. Could we possibly help lessen that a tiny bit? Then that would be a massive gain in both productivity, creativity, and more importantly, well being for artists universally. Notice Adam's approach, beating imposter syndrome by mentoring. If you're coming from a place of fear and insecurity, can you imagine the courage it takes to step out and say, I have something worthwhile to contribute with? Still, whether you speak to your peers, your supervisors, or your mentees, it allows you to step outside of your head. And believe me, measuring yourself against the real world is never as scary as it sounds. The imagined reality inside your own head is way, way scarier.
the more I mentor, the better
That's
that
interesting. That's interesting. So mentoring, talking to other people that way around helps you sort of triangulate, if that's the right word, to get a better and accurate judgment of where am I actually in the real world, not just in my head, where obviously we are a much, much less good person or artist than our reality is like. I mean, it's one of the things that I tell people as well about imposter syndrome. You gotta get out of your head. You need to talk to other people, and you'd be surprised to hear how they see you and how common your problems are. That you think you're just the only person that's an idiot and you don't understand this.
Yeah, before I became into positions where I have to mentor, I would just be in autopilot mode and not think about what I'm actually learning. But when you're actually mentoring, you're kind of forced to remember. You start creating documents. You start having to explain different approaches to people, and it just all comes together then.
Yeah, I can see that. I have for the longest time been obsessed with writing a book about texturing. So even when we were back in university, I started sort of drawing up a document of that nature. But then over the years, I have also from time to time been in situations where I had to teach a course in texturing and so on. And it's very good. You're sort of forced to sit there and in a very concrete way draw up your knowledge and sort of connect the dots of all that stuff that just sort of functions intuitively in your head. But now you need to explain it in a rational, logical manner to another person. It's very good. So today, when you are almost 20 years in to your art career and you've successfully crushed imposter syndrome and you're now promoted to the dizzying heights of lead. I can't even believe that. My goodness. An art director. You've tried it all. Is there anything left? Do you have anything where you are specifically working to become a better artist?
Trying to ingrain myself more and more into communities, in Discord especially. I've joined quite a few places, and I feel like I've got to a point where I kind of just really want to help other
Yeah,
people.
isn't that something? Isn't that something how you reach that point in life where that starts becoming a really, really burning need, to sort of help the next generation along? I have that same inclination right now.
I wonder if it's just a frustration of our times when we were trying to get into this and just how difficult it was and how little resources we had. And now we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity that we
I mean,
didn't.
that is what it is for me. You're literally picking the words out of my mouth. I had a terrible time joining the industry, and I'm just hoping to just make it a little easier for the next generation. Just leave the world a little better than how you found it, so to speak.
Yeah, it's actually nice when you every now and again get like a message on ArtStation or whatever from a student and they're just asking for
Yeah, it
advice.
is. Yeah, it is. It is. It's very satisfying. Or, I in my case, I've artists that I came across that were just fresh out of school, and you sort of take them under your wing. And I came across a couple of people in their first job in the industry, and they just passed by my desk, so to speak, by random chance. But you take them under your wing, you see something in them, and then you're looking at them out there in the marketplace where they are now very successful and established in their own right. And it's like there's a parental joy there. You're sort of like, oh, look at them go. It's very satisfying.
Yeah, I keep seeing like checking up on people that I've helped and following how they're
I
doing. It's
forget.
great.
I was always a terrible finisher. I get very excited about a new project, a new idea, or something like that, and then towards the end, I'm just really struggling to finish. Are you a starter or a finisher?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a big thing with me. That's kind of why I got into, I call it a rut with substance materials, where I found it quite addictive because you could finish a material within days and have that rendered and put on ArtStation, and you'll get likes, loads of likes or whatever. Whereas if you spend a year working on that environment, you can often get much less
Oh,
likes
okay.
than doing like a material that you just spent a few days on. So I kind of got into doing just short-term projects. But the right now I am going through this like desire to create environments and stick to them. And I'm finding what's really helpful for me right now is actually I call them the playgrounds, where each I'll have an environment where I'm just exploring like vegetation and rocks and nature, and then I'll have another one that is something else that I'm wanting to do, like sci-fi, and having another one that's a medieval castle, and just keep going back and forth between each one. And I don't see them as something that they might not even ever come out, but I just see them as areas to play in, and I think that's more healthy for me. And I think ultimately that's going to be how I'm going to actually just finish
Yeah,
projects.
that is a very clever concept. I love that idea. So that it is an ongoing project that just continually evolves over time instead of something where you're like, okay, I'm buttoning this up and tying a bow on it, and that's it. And we're now moving to something else. That finality is hard, I find. Again, the gentleman I was talking to yesterday for the podcast, the guy that was he's a huge creature guy, and Chris Nichols is his name. And like I said, he made help the Thanos come to life, and he has this terrible urge to keep going back to previous art projects and just keep tinkering with them and keep polishing. But this, what you described there, that sort of allows it that it's never finished. It can always be added to. You can add new features, you can add new details as ideas come up. That's a clever way of doing it without having to just do that little small, here's one material, then another material, then another.
Yeah, it just adds a lot, gives a lot more
So
variety.
as you know, I'm a father of girls, and I looking into that world of adolescent girls and young 20 something girls. They get their dopamine kicks out of posting selfies of themselves on Instagram and such places. And then people are giving them likes and they're giving them comments and so on. This is basically what we're talking about here, just for artists.
Yeah, I think artists have the same issue where they're just like into this stage where they just want to keep. Well, I'm talking about myself really. It's just this desire to keep producing and showing. If I go 3 months without posting anything, I get worried that people are thinking, "Oh, what's he up to? Is he just being lazy?" So I have to keep combating, feeling like the need to combat that, and it's really quite funny. But that's partly why I did the playground thing, right? It's just to get out of that need to just keep finishing things.
I see. I think it's not just you, Adam. I think that's all of us. That's, to be honest, that's all of us. Once you have that little jolt of joy when somebody likes something that you've made, which to your eyes looks horrible and disfigured and an ugly baby nobody could ever love. And then somebody likes it, and you're like, it really touches your heart in such a profound way that now, next thing, you're chasing the dragon's tail. You're just like, I need more of that. I mean, I'm speaking for myself now, but that's kind of what I hear from you as well.
For me, because I'm on ArtStation and Discord, I keep seeing people post their final render or whatever, and in like my subconscious, I'm thinking, oh, people are just constantly creating work, and it wasn't.
And you're not.
Yeah, and well, I am, but I just keep like pushing and pushing, and this was a while ago. Like I would make sure that I'm working at least once a week or whatever on personal projects, and
ArtStation envy? Everybody else must be so much better and so much more productive than I am. Surely that is just another way imposter syndrome rears its ugly head. Social media is amazing for reaching a lot of people all at once. But as we also get to watch the highlight reel of so many other people's lives, doesn't it just also have an incredible ability to make us feel bad about ourselves? Comparison is the killer of joy. I'm so used to that on Instagram, but I suppose it is my saving grace that I have a ridiculously bad ArtStation profile. I do admire what others do and follow many artists there with interest, but with zero personal investment in that platform, I just don't take the competition seriously, because we're obviously not in the same race. Minimalism has its benefits.
it wasn't until I listened to this podcast from Josh Lynch, substance artist that I really admired. The one that I did mentoring with, actually.
He's the one with the long beard, right?
Yeah, that's him.
I did actually, because I saw these mentors lined up, and he was the only one that was coming from a surfacing world. I did. I'm also intrigued by this. I did think if I'd known you were mentoring with him, we could have shared notes. I was curious about mentoring with him.
Yeah, no, he's great.
Yeah.
And like you know, collectively, all these like superstar artists are just constantly creating work, right? But when I actually listened to one of his podcasts that he did an interview with, he actually said that he'd not done any work for a year due to burnout. And so I went through his portfolio, and it's like, yeah, actually, he's not actually done anything for a year. It's just me in my subconscious. I see all these different artists just submitting stuff. And so I tell myself, oh, they're always submitting stuff. But it's not the case at all. And actually, just hearing that, it's like, oh, it's okay if I don't do any personal work for even like a month, right? It's fine. You can still survive.
But in our minds, we think everybody else are just producing masterpieces night after night.
Yeah, but
Where does this come from? I wonder. Where does this come from?
well, I
This
think the social media aspect of it is kind of is doing that, right?
You don't think it's also part of this whole imposter syndrome that you're not good enough. You're not good enough. The others are better than you. So you're behind the curve. You're behind in the race, and you just have that burning drive to just I need to run to keep up. I need to because I'm not good enough in myself. I'm not good enough just the way I am.
Yeah, it all comes down to just a desire to better yourself and to create better work that just gets better and better.
Do you remember the little short that you did at university with the carousel and the man
Yeah, yeah,
and the man with the bird mask?
yeah, I remember that. That was wild.
This was your final year project, right?
Yeah, I spent like there were nights on that I just didn't go to sleep. I actually in the last year I made a rule for myself that was once every week I would not go to sleep. And then in the final weeks it actually I upped that to 2. So 2 nights I was just not sleeping.
That can't be healthy.
No, it was really bad. But I just felt I had to do that.
Sorry, it's a bit unfair of me to ask you this, Adam, because this we're talking about something that took place almost 20 years ago. This was in 2005 that we graduated from University of Teesside from the Bachelor of Arts program in computer games design, which was also very much games art, really, as well. And you were doing that final year project there. But correct me if I'm wrong. I had as you were sharing your work in progress and here and there from that project, we were a little group of fellow students and friends that were all sort of like sharing around what we were doing. As you were doing this, I had the distinct impression that you were doing that project. Yeah, of course, it was part of the curriculum that we had to do that. You were doing it just for the heck of it because it was just really cool. It was a really fun concept idea, as in not fun, haha, but something that was just really cool, and you do it for the fun of the work itself. Am I wrong about that?
You're 100% correct. And this has kind of been on my mind a lot lately, in that when you were talking about the struggles of finishing a project, and I think a lot of it is because for me, like I try to imitate what I see on ArtStation's front page or what all the other stuff I see, and I distance myself from doing what gets me excited.
Adam, you don't know how it breaks my heart to hear that.
This is the reason I wanted to record this interview with Adam. Years ago, many years ago, Adam was this uncompromising, brilliant, original artist. What happened to that guy? Not all of us have that pure, beautiful voice to sing with. A few do, and even fewer gets to actually sing that silent song in their hearts. We do live in a world where having that gift rarely puts food on the table, a roof over your head, and clothes on your back. So you do what you have to do to survive. As Alan McKay says, the first rule of visual effects is, as long as you have money, I have time. For most of us, it's no great shame. After all, there are more artists who have that skill of careful observation and mimicry than there are of those who have the ability to create truly original things. From my vantage point, it is the death of an artist like Adam to imitate what others do. It is so easy for me to say, but in reality it is so hard to avoid being shaped by the world around us. And when you follow Alan McKay's first rule of visual effects, that is what will happen. What you do is what you will become. this will shape you into a different type of artist over time. In this case, it is a great shame because Adam was always a bad copycat. Some people have a knack for that, but not Adam. When his own voice flowed, I suppose it got in the way of all the mechanics of following a technique step by step. When we were at university together, if someone did a Space Ranger Hulk mecha robot thing, if Adam should copy that, his attempts would be clumsy and naive. But his original work had a spark that nobody else could match nor imitate. Such a talent, such ability. What happens to that stuff? Is it impermanent? Can it be revived? Can it be ignored? I don't know, because I don't have the gift that people like Adam have. But as a student of art and as someone who appreciates creative and original art, I am haunted by these questions as I've seen Adam's output change dramatically in nature.
So, Peter, you've become a pirate.
Yeah, it's really...
Because that thing, when you were just doing something for the fun of it, it was wild, it was crazy, but you know what? It was also brilliant. And I remember seeing you back then, and I just thought, as you know, this is not my first career. I had a commercial career in investment banking and other business avenues before all of this. So I had still sort of the commercial glasses on. I was seeing everything through commercial lenses. And I remember seeing you, and I thought, my goodness, this guy is just a source of fantastic, unblemished creativity. However, the chances of you being able to use that like for like in a one-to-one ratio in the marketplace, in that is the job market,
Yeah.
very, very unlikely. It was heartbreaking for me because I think I might have mentioned to you that I kind of felt like a responsibility that I needed to somehow if I had $1 million or whatever, X amount of money, put together an animation studio, a team around you, a supported structure around you, and just basically say, Adam, we trust in you. Just let it flow, you know? But it would kind of take some kind of lucky strike like that for you to use that voice that you had there in a work setting.
Yeah. Do you remember the chicken story at Teesside?
Yeah, I was literally quoting that to Chris Nichols, the Thanos guy, yesterday.
No way. Really?
Yes, because he was talking about how all these OG creature masters of old, how they would have decomposing meat and whatever. And I said, like, this is so funny. Let me tell you what a student friend of mine did at Teesside, bought the chicken, letting it rot on the porch so that he could get reliable zombie textures out of it until some idiot kicked it and there was like maggots flying everywhere.
Isn't that wild? Like you'd never go to a studio now and suggest that.
No, but you were doing something out of your own volition that geniuses before you had thought, yeah, this is the natural approach, you know? You still arrived at the same place.
Yeah, it's kind of like sad that you just don't get that. But I know it makes sense that you wouldn't do that because you can recreate it now. But yeah, that sense of just mayhem as a texture artist.
Yeah.
That was those were fun days.
So I want to ask you that when over the years you've always had a very strong output outside of your work. You've always had a lot of projects on the go in your spare time. Like you were talking now about all these materials that you're creating in Substance Designer, and very impressive. But you've done a lot of other things. Like you used to create these elaborate short videos, many of them set in an alternate universe of Nintendo, for example.
Yeah.
I would say that was something that was closer to the carousel and the man with the bird mask.
Yeah.
It was like a cousin to that, if not a brother or sister.
Yeah, they were very similar.
What happened where that changes to something so much more, what should we say, down to earth, practical, like making materials for objects? And that becomes now, this is what I do with my spare time kind of thing. It's quite a drastic change.
I wonder if it's to do with just there's so many different software, so many different techniques and stuff now that I just feel like I have to keep up with a lot, and that takes time away. Right now, like if I was to do that, figuring out the animation that's been updated, that's now more advanced, and figuring out the rendering and all that, maybe that puts me off. It feels like it would be so much more work now. Whereas back in those days, the Nintendo videos, they were very, very low quality. But maybe I could just keep them low quality.
I think you're selling yourself short, to be completely honest, because yeah, they were low quality. But do you know what you had? It's a bit like the carousel and the bird man with the bird mask, and the plague doctor style bird mask. There, all of that. It was you had very few number of assets, but you managed to create a whole world and a story just with very little. So yeah, so the Nintendo videos, yeah, you didn't have super high fidelity assets and smooth animation or whatever. But still, with these simple tools, you manage to present something really raw and powerful. So competing on the whole, oh, we have higher quality textures there. That's irrelevant because do you understand? That was not the style of what you were doing. That was just understood that this is not what that is. This is not a tech demo. This is something else.
Maybe I could use AI now to just create some very quick textures and models
Yeah,
to speed up that process and just focus, on the creative storytelling or whatever. Maybe that's something that I don't know. When I retire, I can just focus on like those really weird animations.
they were great though. They were great. I have a couple of guys that are doing things on a very irregular basis, and I'm just looking so much forward to their next outputs. There is a Canadian animator that lives somewhere in the prairie states called Cordell Barker, and he won an Oscar actually, and many other prizes besides. And he works as a commercial illustrator or something like that, making advertisements and pretty boring and uninspiring. But then in his spare time, he puts together hand drawn animations, and it's pretty much every 5 to 8 years he has a new one out. And I'm always so excited to see them. And like I said, one of them has taken an Oscar and many other prizes besides. So I don't know if you remember. I think we were shown these in back in university. The cat came back was his very first.
Yeah,
That was his very first
yeah.
one, and he's just sitting there in his basement drawing away, and just it's not high fidelity, but it's fantastic storytelling with a lot of charm and humor and his particular voice, and he's just doing it for the hell of it.
But now, if I was to like learn how to do, animation again, like that would be taking time away from learning. I don't know the new spline tool in Substance, or one of the other million things that are coming up that I need to keep on top of for my job that I get paid for.
That this is the reality that we have, that we're balancing. On one hand, I need to pay rent. On the other hand, I got all these cool ideas over here. How do we balance them out? That's true.
The question I guess would be, if I had all the money in the world and quit my job, would I still be doing like substance materials or whatever, right? Or environments? Or would I be creating like a more personal kind of artwork?
I'm guessing that on some level, since you really take into the substance designer package there, I'm guessing at some level you do enjoy doing. There must be parts of that you enjoy.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would definitely use, regardless of if I worked on my own animation or whatever, I would still use Substance just because I find it a really valuable, useful tool.
definitely.
That speeds up my process a lot.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. See, when I compare myself with you, Adam, I, as a kid, I also had stories in my head and all the sort of the pure raw creativity. But I have met so many people since then, and you are certainly one of them where I'm just thinking I have to just take my hat off and say you're just head and shoulders better than what I can produce in that realm. I have some other things that I can do, and I'll focus humbly on those, and those completely just that raw creativity. People like you have that. I don't have that on that level. I really don't. But there are other things I can do, and I take pleasure in them, and I derive joy from them. So probably for someone like me, being a word that trade off with being a working artist, where I don't need to shoehorn myself so much into the work. I don't need to, for me to take direction from other people. It's not a problem. I enjoy that, and just doing the legwork instead of being the general that issues the orders and the direction and so on. But you have something, Adam.
Do you find in your work that you're able to use your creativity?
I mean, it becomes the creativity. What is that? Creativity is solving a problem. Basically, it's coming up with a solution to a problem. To In our case, it's mostly a visual problem, right? And so it needs to sort of tick certain boxes, whether those are constraints or features, and I use my creativity for that, understanding the tools that are available to myself in my job as a visual effects artist, and how do I best combine them and the features that they have in order to produce the result in a fairly quick and simple manner. So in that way, I'm the foot soldier on the floor. I know my weapons very well, and I'll take care of those assignments I get. That's what I can do. And there is an aspect of creativity to that. It's very rare that I have assignments where it's on me to start fleshing out design elements or concept art, or things that are in that realm where you are sort of like, I will maybe do subtle changes here and there that I think this looks better. If we're trying to do this, then let me just add that this little thing that will make it look better. And sometimes the directors are agreeing with that, or they don't even notice it because it looks right. Or other times they're like, no, actually, we don't want that turquoise eyeshadow. Make it purple, or whatever it may be. So that's how it plays out in my world.
I guess that's the difference with our, well, at least with where we're at the moment, is that you're given concepts a lot to follow, whereas it's rare that I get
Really?
concepts.
Okay, so it's just for you guys to just figure something out?
Yeah, most of the time, yeah.
You don't have like a style sheet or reference or.
Generally, most you'll get a mood board,
Okay.
but
That,
rarely do you get like a very, copy this exactly.
oh, that sounds kind of that adds already like quite a large, interesting challenge in terms of just artistry.
Yeah, that's kind of why I've stayed for so long is just that there's a lot of like free to make decisions. People listen to you. There's a lot of freedom.
That's kind of cool. Okay. Well, that's definitely different from the visual effects world or animation world as well, where you will expect to have a piece of concept art and you're basically told make that.
There's definitely going to be game studios that are like that, like what you describe, where you're just given a list of stuff to do and you just create that. But I've never really moved towards that.
Apart from your things on the side here in the material, the substance designer materials and so on, do you do any traditional art on the side?
No, I used to, but again, it's that thing of like, well, I would rather spend this time developing areas that I'm actually creating at work.
Okay.
And I've kind of I used to do a lot of like drawing monsters and creatures and stuff, but now I'm just much more focused on the environments.
It makes sense. We are shaped by our environment, and if your task is and being an environment artist, and over time, that's what you're going to become, you know.
Yeah.
So almost 20 years in, are there any magic shortcuts? Are there any things that you can sort of like travel back in the DeLorean time machine and tell a younger Adam back then and say like, come here, son. Let me tell you something. What advice would you give yourself when you're starting out? Or is there any advice that would matter much at all?
Honestly, I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing, but yes, I've got a few ideas. Probably limit noodling
Noodling.
is one.
What do you?
Yeah, just I'm talking in context of like modeling or moving set dressing around in game engines. Like just
That sounds like a nice low stress activity where you can sort of feel like I'm doing something.
oh, it is it's nice, but if you go in with a plan, you're gonna use that time much more wisely. You gotta try and avoid when working on personal projects, for example, like avoid that just thinking, oh, I have a hour, I'm gonna work on this asset for an hour. It's much better to just go in there knowing, having a goal of what you're going to do and making that decision in that hour. Like, this is it. I'm not going to mess around with that after this hour. This is the only hour I have left to do this.
I can see that. That sort of takes it much more into the realm of how we're working, basically, that everything has a time constraint and you better think good and hard about it before you start working, you know?
Because if you just spend, I don't know, say like 2 hours just trying to refine something, it's so often the case that if you just return to that same thing the next day, you'd figure it out in 10 minutes. Sometimes your brain's just not in the right place, but you try and just push on and just noodle, as I call it. The thing with noodling is that something that you're spending a substantial amount of time on could be done like so much shorter if you do it on a different day. And that could be due to a whole host of different reasons, right? Actually, it's the same as problem solving, where you just get hyper focused on the problem and you just want to fix it there and then so that you can relax. When so many times just walking away and doing it the next day, it solves itself so much more quickly. And again, that's due to a host of different reasons. Those could be anything from forgetting that there was a particular tool to realizing that you need more reference, and then when you find a reference, the solution's right there. Or it could be even that you just realize that now is not the time to be solving that issue, and then you go off and do something else. You create more pillars for another area of the map, and then when you return to the problem area, you can just use those pillars there, and that solves the issue. Or you continue evolving the map, you put lighting into it, and then you realize that that problem area that you were noodling on for 2 hours isn't even viewable, it's in shadow or whatever. So with long-term personal projects, I've just come to learn that it's better just to keep moving and to recognize if you're just hyper-focused on one particular problem or area. So it's good to try and learn to identify it, to recognize when you're in that state.
So when your brain is not in the right state, and that's an interesting thing to just pause on for a moment. And I mean, like, it's not every day you feel inspired and motivated and just, on fire, that's for sure. Where do you go from there? What do you do to sort of do damage control? Do you have anything, any technique that's other than tell yourself stop noodling? Do you have anything that sort of help sort of somehow by hook or by crook get you through the day or through the asset or whatever it may be?
Well, I mean, definitely going through any notes you've made of what the goal is and setting yourself a strict time limit is the main one.
I do find that in those moments, that's kind of when you show what kind of professional you are, you know? Like how low is your floor the floor of your creativity, not the ceiling when everything is singing and dancing and everything is amazing, but how low is your floor, which defines you as a creative, not as a, it defines you as a professional, I would say. What can you still produce under those circumstances? I seem to remember, what was his name? Chuck Jones, the guy that directed and came up with Roger Rabbit.
Sorry, Chuck Jones. Legendary animation director Chuck Jones did not create Roger Rabbit, but famously created Bugs Bunny, of course. Big mistake. Roger Rabbit was conceived by Richard Williams, of course. Sorry, gotta get my animated rabbit straight.
The cartoons, he said, he had this saying, inspiration is for amateurs. You can't just only create on the good days. You need to have something in place for all the other days when things aren't working and you're just, for whatever reason, you're just not in the mood for it.
Yeah, typically you save those days for things like UVs.
Yeah, definitely. There's something AI could figure out, please, and quickly.
Or, yeah, I don't think AI could figure out entirely like UVs. It could get you, it's that 80% thing again. Like, you'd always have to do some refinement on complex models, What advice would you give to someone? I would say another big thing is not putting too much responsibility on yourself. So in the past, I would create like a not so great asset or whatever, or it would just go wrong or whatever. I mean, I would, in my head, I would feel 10%, at least 10% responsible. But in reality, it's more like 0.1% because you don't think of all the other cogs in the wheel, I guess. Producers, concept artists, level designers that give you the right measurements, or and then it goes even deeper than that, where it's like the publishers, coming up with a very specific idea that was just not very well managed with the budget or whatever. So yeah, just the sense of responsibility is probably much lower than what you're imagining it to be. Actually, do you know what? I say 10%, but actually earlier on in my career, I would say it could have been as high as, say, 50%, right? Because working on an asset that's been modeled by someone else and I'm texturing it, then I could feel as high as, say, 50% responsible. When in reality, there's just so many things at play here from across multiple departments.
I think, again, that sort of whatever it is that creates the imposter syndrome in our heads, it also tells us this thing that we're pretty much the worst person ever. And anything bad that is going wrong with this asset or whatever is down to you. And it's a heavy thing to carry around with you. But in actual fact, when you look at all the components that have gone into it before you and that have determined so many things before you even touch it, it's a little bit more optimistic than I think, that it's not all down to you. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'd say like even nearly 20 years into this industry, almost every task I feel hasn't gone well. Like there's problems with it, but that's the perfectionist aspect coming out of me.
Yeah, that is what drives us to keep improving, which is how you reach to go from craft level to art level, I guess, because of that relentless drive to just keep polishing, keep improving, keep never happy.
Yeah, I mean, even if you have all the time in the world, you're not going to get it perfect. I think, what is it? They say art is never complete.
That's true.
That's true.
Definitely. Speaking of things that are broken, what are the most difficult assets, projects, situations of any kind, could involve colleagues, supervisors, anything that, like something where you were just really hitting your head against the wall, and how did you find your way through it? Do you have any tales from the trenches that you could share?
Adam Capone will be back in a future episode.
thanks for spending a little bit of your day with us. We have a tiny bit of housekeeping to do on the way out. If this episode has been helpful to you, why not share the podcast with your colleagues and friends? If you'd like to support the podcast, I'd appreciate if you bought me a coffee. You can do that on Ko-fi. That is spelled ko-fi.com/The Naked Texture Artist. One word. If you have suggestions, comments, or questions, I'd love to hear them. Feel free to drop me a line on thenakedtextureartist@gmail.com. That is The Naked Texture Artist written out in all one word @gmail.com. As I mentioned, having a busy day job in visual effects means my release schedule for this podcast can be a bit irregular. So if you don't want to miss out, subscribe to The Naked Texture Artist wherever you get your podcasts. Or follow the podcast on the socials, then you'll be alerted when the next episode drops. The music in this episode was Awake by Tycho. Nick Sifoni helped put the sound together, and everything else was done by me, your host, Mark Pierre Sondergaard. Speak to you soon.